correspondence.
Let's do it.
Alright, started.
In a world. I have to, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that'd be cool. If we actually had the other part of the introduction.
So here, I've got some notes that I've revisited. These are ideas and principles that I've learned years ago, but like there's a difference between like learning, knowing, and understanding a thing. And so for the last couple of years, I've gone through this very passive regimen of observing all of these things and how they dwell and shape the universe in and around us. And I mean, luckily, they're out there to explore. It's just you gotta have the right lens to fixate the validity of the teaching to every area of life, and they're Hermetic principles. But I don't really like where it comes from or where people think it comes from. It gets its name from Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great. And I don't really dig that for the sheer sake of like, well, what's so great about that in the first place? Who set that standard? Yeah, it's very, very potent and valid information, but there's a little bit of bias on that behalf. So I try not to subscribe to the bias behind the intention, but the intention behind the teaching. And that, to me, has proven to be more than valid. If anybody's read, like, the Kabbalion and all these, like, super double secret ancient texts that are readily available online, it's there, and a lot of the principles that are present there all in one place, they predate most of the organized theology that pervades the planet now. So you see or you see a religion.
Repeat that last part.
What of it is valid?
Repeat that last part.
Yeah,
It's the internet cable up.
Yeah, I think it's mine. These principles can be found all in one place if you're looking in the right place, but you can see them in everything. Most religions and theologies take and kind of pick and choose and write over them, and you're really forced to read and reread these stories, these myths and legends of holy men that really do everything but address it directly. And with that, we're just like, well, gosh, you must know so much. I revere you as a deity, but at the end of the day, it's there to be had, not just kind of written over or anything. I think that's kind of where we get a little confused. But I mean, this is the natural law of things. The fabric and the material that kind of weaves in and out of our existence and stabilizes and makes it kind of make sense to me. And like I said, I learned this a long time ago, but I didn't understand it. It took me a couple of years of observing to really solidify the potency that this carries, and revisiting it in the hindsight of knowing. It's like, great, I can write these things down very simply, and I don't feel like there's a person I can't explain this to. So the time well spent there. I think it's very basic, but at the same time all encompassing. So if you'd like, I'd like to go over them, and I'd love to hear what you have to. Yes, feedback. That's always very good. It's always very fruitful conversation when two self-similar comprehensions are in play. So, like I said, some of it is like, oh, well, yes, of course, that only makes sense. But together, it's so simple. So, these are the Hermetic Principles by the universe, by Spencer. So the first natural law there is, it's kind of just that first defining step, is the law of mentalism, being that everything is in the mind. It's fractured through a mental state. It doesn't matter, like, if I'm eating an orange or slaying a lamb. It all processes through the mind, through this electrical storm happening, playing out my brains. The thought is what always forms first, and then physicality follows. So, something, it's only as solid as you're going to perceive it. It doesn't mean, like, I can just put my hand through a fucking wall or something. But it does mean recognizing, and by the recognition, it's in our mind. That being said, our thoughts create our existence. Truly. If you change your thoughts, you can change the quality of your experience. So, if you are so hell-bent on seeing, the negative side of things, you could be handed, like, a trunk full of gold, or you could just be handed this, like, ripe opportunity, but the mind has melded itself to accept something different. And so we'll be handed this pot of gold, and we'll be like, oh, maybe it was stolen, or, you question this opportunity, and you break it down till it's nothing, till all you have is a box of lead. So if you change your thoughts, you change the quality of your experience, and if you want something different, then you have to do something different. You have to think differently, approach it from another perspective. And that really is, that's the first law, is that everything is mind. They say we are the universe experiencing itself through this human perspective, but ultimately we have this massive universe inside of us. So, we only perceive it through the mind. Even emotions of the heart have to filter through the mind at some point. So that kind of leads me into the second law, the natural law, and that's correspondence. This is one that's kind of been a little bit more widely popularized in this newest age movement. And that is what is above, so below, and what is below as above. This all-encompassing macrocosm outside of us, this totality, reflects equally the infinitesimally small microcosm, the individual units. Something that you know and you're well versed in is that this reality is holographic in its own nature. And you break down the word holographic, you see the root holistic, hologram. And that being stated, I'll give you an example. If you have, like, a bunch of Lego building blocks, all different materials, you build this wonderful house, you can take them apart, and it's like, okay, there are these individual units, but they're all kind of a little different. However, with a hologram, something that's holographic, like, let's say we have a cube, like, being projected through light. And to us, it's solid. However, it's just a vibration of light. Now, if you split a little piece of that cube, you still have the exact same material. It's unwavering, but it's the same as the whole. So the holistic, the holographic, the hologram. So to understand a piece, to understand the macrocosm, the stars and the universe, the things outside of us, you must understand the microcosm. And to understand the microcosm, you first must realize that it's all, yes, whatever, it's connected, but it is infinitely mirroring itself. We see these self-similar things. The Fibonacci sequence, for example, and the golden ratio, they go hand in hand. You know, the joints in my fingers and the bones in my hand correspond to the way a sunflower blooms, and the way a tree branches out, and the way a river flows, and just the rate at which we walk and breathe. Everything has this beautiful mathematic correspondence. And people will be like, oh, that's a very cold way of thinking about it and measuring the universe, but it is that other side of the coin. There's nothing not beautiful about it. It's just another way of looking at it. So the universe is inherently fractal. It is self-similar across all spectrums, which leads us to the third natural law, and that's vibration. Again, this is another. It's becoming more popular with all these publications and people coming out and saying, "Hey, man, I dig your vibe." It's become this relevant thing again. It's always been relevant, but it states that there is nothing truly at rest. I mean, on the surface, something may seem completely solid, but when you really break it down, when you really look into it, there is motion, there is vibration. There is no non-motion. And the state of rest, like we perceive death, is just this ridiculous concept that's a cop-out. There's always more. There always is more. Nothing is completely at rest. Matter cannot be created or destroyed. It just transmutes. All of this existence is vibration. Solidity is an illusion of vibratory differential. So when you take something like light, sound, matter, antimatter, it's just different rates of vibration. People are so fixated, like, ooh, pick up this quartz or pick up this ball of lead. You feel that right there? Well, yeah, okay, whatever. It's vibration, and we are just kind of like light condensed to a certain vibration, as well as sound and everything that seems so terribly solid. We're all moving. We're all going somewhere. Or we have this innate ability to not move. So just any of all of this, everything that passes through the mind, it's all vibrating. Even the mind has this potent vibration. So even like thoughts have forms, and thoughts form first, so that has a certain vibration. You take negativity and all of that, and it feels a certain way, and you're around a person and you're just like, I can't explain it, man, but I get really weird vibes from this guy. It's not to be explained. It just is self-explanatory. But on the topic of like, ooh, good vibes, bad vibes, and good and evil, whatever, man. The fourth law, the fourth principle is polarity. So you have everything that I've talked about so far. Everything has this dual nature. The mind, in which everything passes through, perceives everything within duality of the spectrum. For instance, we have left and right hemispheres of the brain. We have these radical concepts of like good, evil, and a coin, for God's sakes. A coin has a heads and a tail. And, everything's kind of divided amongst itself. So my thing is, these are all kind of just things that we perceive through the mind, that everything is opposites to a degree. But what I pressure people to consider is, what is the difference between good and evil and heads and tails, or a Republican and a Democrat, And if you take the example of temperature, we have the idea hot and cold, like, while I'm warm, I'm cold. But can you point to me on a thermometer with a pen, or mark a line and say, this is the defining moment at which hot becomes cold? I'll draw the line at 60 degrees, but somebody comes along and is like, well, bro, I'm from Minnesota and you're out of your mind. So it's all different perspectives of polarity. But like, you have heat, and then you have the absence of heat. It's not hot and cold. It's one thing, and it's the presence of one thing, and then the lack of presence. So it's this long spectrum. So everything is identical in nature, but different in degree. So I like saying this because it's true. All conflicting differentials have, at some level, they have this ability to be reconciled. And yes, that includes a paradox. This thing that so self-damning and like really messes with our heads. But that's just, it's beautiful. Like, you can reconcile a paradox on some level. Everything can be reconciled. So for example, the unified field theory. That's a little bit out there of a concept, but so is a freaking paradox. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear. So a paradox is so out there, but so is the unified field theory, saying that all things are one thing, and that everything is a part of one whole organism. So even a paradox at that level can be reconciled. The fifth principle is rhythm, and that all things have an outward and an inward. There is this natural flow to things. For example, like it's in layers. We've got waves and tides, and so like with the influx of a tide, you also have waves rolling in and out, and with the outflux of a tide, you still have waves rolling in and out. So it just goes to show you that there is this fractal nature to existence. Now, like, everything has a rise and a fall, a crest and a trough. So like a pendulum swing resonates in everything. And at the end of the day, this is, it's like, oh wow, these are such rigid concepts, but they're mostly just tendencies, truly, existing most certainly. But if you wanna overcome these tendencies of the universe, it requires like so much energy. And for example, if you have a man who's determined to get away from shore, this man is gonna have a hell of a time rowing out to sea if the tide's coming in. It's working against him as he's trying to move. But if he's smart, he knows the tides have this ebb and flow, so he decides to go out on the ocean when the tide is going out. So instead of expelling so much force, he's using the natural flow of the earth to get him where he wants to go. And like I said, it can be overcome. It just requires a hell of a lot of energy, attention to these things. If you wanted to go with the tide, you can do that. That's the smart thing to do. It's the easy route. But if you were hell bent on breaking this rule, you can do it. You're going to be tired after rowing, and on the proverbial waves coming in. So that being said, with me saying, they're just tendencies that can be overcome, there is this underlying cause and effect which is the sixth principle, cause and effect. Every cause has an effect, and every effect has a cause. So if you're going to row out to sea with the tide coming in, the result of that is that you're going to be exhausted, and you're not going to get as far as you want to go. But if you use the tide, you're going to get a lot farther on a lot less energy. So everything has a cause and effect, and that truly is one of the most rigid things that I've talked about so far. And that's because it's the law of things. Chance, as we know it, this randomness of life, is only a name given to a law that's not been recognized yet. So there are like so many planes of causation, in lighting a fire, cause and effect, or voting for president, cause and effect. Everything has its just result. So this is like one of the most basic laws, and yes, there is free will. Most certainly there is free will. We really can do anything we want. We can row out to sea with the tide coming in. But with cause and effect, if you break one of these natural laws, which is very possible, there's free will, yes, but none that can ignore the law without consequence. So, yeah, like I said, you can break a natural law, but not without suffering some sort of some repercussion. And some people think, karma can be instant or karma takes too long. It depends on what's like set up in karma's way, if we are to understand this. And this kind of delves into the fact that, cause and effect, yeah, karma, we see that in tons of theologies and stuff, but it's never like properly defined. Everybody tries to work their way around it, but there really is no escaping this very, very basic A, B. You do A, B happens. Because of B, another A has to come about, and it just forever and ever. Amen. But if you think about somebody sitting in the middle of a ring of dominoes with dominoes on both sides, and it just goes all the way around, yeah, you can knock over dominoes and sit and wonder and wait, but eventually it comes back around and hits you. Just depends on what's there. The seventh natural law, and I think one of the more unexplored regions of the governing format of existence, is the principle of gender. Everything has a masculine and feminine. They manifest on all planes. And we here, in this reality, in this point in time, this wavelength, this vibration, we are only seeing the physicality manifest. It manifests on this plane, everybody has their corresponding physical gender. Everybody's born with certain bits, as it were. But it's unexplored in part because you have all of these people that are just like, I feel like I need to have tits, but I don't have boobs, and they fancy a certain person, and you just, with the way life and everything that corresponds to this life right now is set up, it's been demonized and all these things. And I'm not saying like go out and sleep with whatever rock you want to, but like, for God's sakes, there's this massive diversity, and that plays directly into the law of polarity, the good and the evil, the one or the other, the masculine, the feminine. But like I said, it's just how we perceive it. It's just this huge spectrum, or all points on this endless spectrum of perspective. So I think with this exploration of, I'm gonna hate myself for saying this, but like Caitlyn Jenner, this person who has not only the resources but the potency to make this statement. It's starting the conversation, as opposed to just like, male and female bathrooms. It's like they're all the same fucking toilet, man. We had unisex bathrooms in our house forever. I've got tons of roommates who are girls, and we all use the same restroom. So there's this weird block set in the way right now that we see. It's one thing or the other thing, and I think with that in play, we're coming to realize maybe not so rigid, bro. Chill. So gender manifests on this plane as the genitalia, but masculinity, this potent, this set of being, it's logical, it's analytical, and there's all these linear thoughts. So a masculine thought is point A, point B, straight line, and get to point A. Quickest way to get from point A to point B is a straight line. Now that's very, very left brain. That's the male side of the brain, the logical side. The one that equates all of these equations and makes all of this world try and make sense, tries to bend it. And I think we've just really forced the bending. So it's a little rough right now. But the feminine on the opposite side of the coin is that creativity, the compassion, and the holistic thoughts. It really is a holistic world, and so we are just struggling with masculinity in a feminine world. We all come from feminine energy. That's where we come from. But we've kind of had all the stuff set up, and like I said, it's one of the least explored principles, I think. Before I get to the last one, I want to explain that, the 7 principles, they can be found in a lot of books, but there is this force behind all of it. Some people would say, oh, it's God, or something else. We've always struggled with it. We don't know what the hell to call it. And if you think of the principles as pillars in a room, okay, the fabric of existence is what it's all holding up and defining and securing. But pillars don't float. There has to be foundation to this thing. We've lost sight of the ground that we tread. And, because of that, you ask any man, woman, or child, what comes first? What comes first in your life? And most people will say, God comes first, or my family comes first, or I have to work, or just something along those lines. But a principle is the first thing. Number one, man. And people have been living without principle for the longest time. People will pick and choose their different principles from theologies all around the planet and say, hey, I've got a pretty good grasp on this. But until that truly is placed first, we're just kind of digging underground looking for treasure when it is, in fact, the ground we stand on now. And so we call the 8th principle the lost principle. And it's not so much lost as it has been forgotten or overlooked. And we, as a species, I think, right now is the crucial time to, pick this up and really adhere to this thing, the foundation first. I save it for last because I think it's probably the most important thing. And some people would say, love defines all this stuff, and, we've really bastardized that term, man. And so, it's care that makes this make sense. Not compassion, because compassion is just the mind and the heart going, hey, this thing has to resonate somehow. But care, truly care, caring, the act of doing, the process of what it takes to do something. If you want to take action, you first have to feel it. in your heart. It starts in the heart. The heart is the first thing that forms when our cells are dividing. It's the very first chamber. The first thing that's detectable when a child is conceived is the heartbeat. That's the first thing they look for. And so the heart being the first thing, that's where it starts. We have to feel something. But it can't just like sit there, because then, that's passion, that's anger, and that's just a feeling. That's just something festering in your chest, in your soul even. But after that, like, you have to think about it. You gotta think about what you're feeling. And if we can't truly define it, we're stuck there, but between our head and our heart, and that's compassion. That's the being trapped between the head and the heart. And it's not a bad thing. For God's sakes, if your gears are turning, just keep them turning. But then, like, from your heart, you have to feel, and then it has to go to your head. Because if you don't think about what you're feeling, then you just kind of lash out and lust in a certain direction, whether it's learning or loving. If there's no direction, then there is no way. So after that, you have to know enough to act on something. You have to feel enough, to think enough, to act enough. So it goes from your heart to your head to your gut, and you act with our gut. We have these three centers of the body that operate as furnaces almost, where vibration and bioelectricity circulate, most certainly. And so if you're stuck feeling something, not thinking about it, you'll never be able to act. And if you're just acting blindly, then you're never going to feel what it is you're doing, especially if you're not thinking about it. So that, to me, is the most fundamental thing, is that, like, alchemical process in the body of turning this feeling of lead to this end product of acting. And that's gold, man. Truly, that's gold. And so I feel that's kind of what we're missing right now, is just this ability to care, to give a fuck. And, I mean, there are so many things. There's this mass amount of masculine energy that's kind of dammed up the flow, and we're not seeing that natural pattern occur. But, I mean, it's happening, but it's happening slower. We're on this downward slope. So if we could just recognize that, yes, there's this flow to life, then we can ride the wave. If we understand the momentum we gain as we go down, however far down this wave takes us, we can ride it up into this femininity, this reemergence of creative energy. And, like, you see this wave throughout history, throughout the things that shaped our civilizations. So, you have the very, very intense, like the Inquisition. That's a very masculine-minded thing. I'm going to torture you until you tell me what I want to hear. And, that's A and B. People tried to make an art of it, but it's very A, B. So a means to achieve an end. No in between, but what little there is. And so after that, I really could be stupid about this. I could be wrong. But whatever. As an example, like a feminine point in our history, this turning point of theology and philosophy, you look at places like Greece and like the emergence of the Renaissance, where all of these feelings were mapped out and said, hey, this has some validity too. So it's there, and it's there to be acknowledged. Once you acknowledge and learn, all you have to do from there is understand. So you acknowledge with your heart, you explain it with your mind, and then once you have that process figured out, however fucking long it takes you, like your mission in life could be to just make that woman on the corner in downtown wherever, person you've never met smile and go about her day a little differently. And you could have struggled with everything in your life up to that point just for that, and you die, you get hit by a car. Well, that's it, man. Like, all of this process has happened. But until you act, nothing really moves forward. So, you have you see these three things kind of manifest in people, and some people kind of get stuck there. You've got, like, people like Stephen Hawking. Good God, Stephen Hawking. Why is that so hard to remember? The Speak and Spell. That is Stephen Hawking. He, when you think of that, he's like, oh, that's a very smart man. Well, that's about all there is to that. We don't think of him as going out and protesting a certain thing, or just like, being this abundantly flowing fountain of love. We think about what he's contributed intellectually, because that's where he is on this journey. That wherever the hell he is, that's where he is. He's specialized himself in the head. You have people that just feel so much. And that's kind of where a lot of people are right now. Where we all feel that something's kind of wrong, but there's a lot happening and we can't quite wrap our heads around it. So we're stuck in this, like, oh, God, give me some freaking antidepressants, because this is all so terrible. So, like, Gandhi, I'm giving, like, really crude examples. If you can think of any other ones, like, please share. But, like, Gandhi was, like, very heart-centered. And, everybody has, like, something wrong with them. But, everybody is, like, perfect to their own degree. Everybody has their own field of expertise to bring to the table. But, like, Gandhi was, like, really heart-centered. That's where everybody kind of knows him from, is his, the way he made people feel and think about things. So, trying to think of who, like, would just be, okay, so, like, somebody who just kind of comes from their gut would be, like, Donald Trump. Somebody who just, like, opens their mouth and it's like, and this dude's about to be the president, there's a chance, I'm not saying anything, but, he's just action, let's build a wall, let's do this thing, and, whatever, it resonates with people, is because people are stuck in their gut, just acting, without really feeling or thinking. There are hints of it in all things, but, everybody kind of has their own way of going about things, and the process of going from your heart to your head to your gut, it's this perfect organic way of going about this existence. At least from where I'm coming from. I really don't claim or pretend to be an authority on anything. I just know that, like, everybody has something to bring to the table. Whether it's the equivalent of peas, carrots, the table, or like a whole roast or a fork. Everything is kind of essential to enjoying a proper meal. And, I think it's about time we ate our fucking peas, man. There it is, I said my piece.
Well, I don't know how to speak after that. I'm glad I got that recorded. If anybody's watching now, I hope you think about it and really think about it and comprehend it. These ideas have been around for thousands of years, but I haven't heard them explained so well in a very long time, and really never in public. Never in this society, if you will.
Yeah, don't you know I'm crazy?
Well, I guess we all are.
You have to be.
Well, you have to be, because that's the only way you can realize you're not and you're sane, because it's all either polarized or corresponding to another layer.
Yes!
So, I've had a little bit of I've thought about these before, but you got it all lined up. I wrote about it all, on all these ideas here, and even sometimes where you were saying the beginning of it, and I kind of like carried out what I felt like were thoughts, then you'd like finish off bringing it back around. So it's almost like you talked about how everything's a metaphor. Everything is best explained through metaphors. There's no point in doing it. And then you think about multiple layers of reality being explained in different actual experiences. Well, you'd have to use metaphors because one, what's happening here wouldn't exactly meet up with what's happening there. So metaphors is the language of the truth. But it's like everyone brings something to the table. It's kind of like these were like those pack-a-lunch meals that you get as a kid. Like you put each one into like its own box so that you don't really need to rely on anything else. But when you go out in the world and want to experience this, you gotta take it in from everywhere.
Yeah, you bring the crackers, man, and I will bring the bologna. Nobody eats the fucking cheese anyway.
Oh man. All right. I'm just gonna go off because I don't know what to do now, which I really have. That's never happened before. So I'm just gonna go off of some of the ideas that I got from them. One of the main things is how, once again, in explaining these concepts, and that's real good as long as the acid doesn't stay on too long.
Mm-hmm.
In explaining these concepts, you would go through the meaning of it and what we gain by understanding that, and then what can be lost. Not really lost, there's nothing there, it's just balance or imbalance, but what happens out of the imbalance, what happens there when that principle is not maintained and respected and understood. And so one of the main things I want to do is kind of go back through them all real quick, and then restate that, form that, so that people get the idea that it's not I don't want to say it's a manual, but it's almost like a manual for how we can approach the universe. And none of them really work alone. They are pretty much, it's like a painting or a meal that adds up, not even in succession, but all together they have to be organized. And when you keep them all together and you get the whole picture, whatever you're looking at, it's as if it's not there's nothing hidden anymore about it. It's as if you can see the whole thing as if it were an object and you're rotating it around, but it's whatever it is the concepts of the experience of reality. It's consciousness. So without these principles, because we possibly would know them, in a previous society where there wasn't so much BS, or maybe going to school and just the simple stuff that your parents would teach you would be based upon these natural principles, and so we wouldn't have to be taught them in that way. Other than, we probably wouldn't just wake up knowing them, although maybe we could. But,
you get hit hard enough in the head, you wake to something completely different, So, it takes objectivity, kind of stepping back and observing. Like I said, it took me a couple of years of, knowing these things and going, hey, that really makes sense to me. But understanding and seeing it objectively play out through every facet of life and love and loss. I mean, that's it, man. So, I can dig it if you can dig it.
It's kind of like we look at everything, at least in this society, is for an object of consciousness or a thing, but we only see the surface. We only see one side, one face, one facet of that glowing jewel of consciousness. When you turn it, you angle it, you rotate it, and it's funny because you angle it, and you don't get the other side, which is just opposite of that side. You get a completely new idea that represents that same central core. And you do it all the way, and you get maybe 7 or 8 principles. So, first one, mentalism. I like how you said everything's fractured through the mental state as if it's a prism. The mind is the prism. Not prison, but the prism. But it could be, if you don't respect that, then it could be a prison, because if you get on a negative mental pattern, everything is shaded that way. And so, but that's where I get the idea that fear is basically the mind killer. It's the lack of understanding that the mind is what is going to be the initial governor of what we're experiencing, our reality, as well as our adherence of all the other facets or principles. But the first concept is that it's in our head, it's in our mind. It's that we have control over that. If we don't have control over our gender, the rhythm of everything, all these other things, we have control of how we choose to perceive and how we organize ourselves in reflection in relation to what we're looking at. So when every layer you go, you get, it's like you power up, you get another a layer of power to the world. And so this is what they were doing for thousands of years. This is why this information is written on the walls throughout every nook and cranny of all the civilizations that had any impact overall, we can see that didn't turn to dust immediately. So it's really, people should be interested. I'm not going to say what people should or shouldn't be, but those that know should be. Yeah, what you just said, the way you organized it, because there's no videos where people actually finally, you got to buy it or go through a website and it's all over the place. That's good. All right. So fear is kind of the mind killer. It's what is present when the first principle is not comprehended or kept in check or it is ignored. Then the correspondence is a little bit more. It's literally the next layer up, and it's more complicated. It's similar to polarity or duality, but it's more basic in the sense that it's not yet polarized to any concept or any side of any concept. It's literally the self-similarity between one layer and the next, and how those layers can represent, whether it's right or left or up or down or in or out. It's simply one layer reflects the next or the other. And that you related that very nicely to the holographic projection theory, which is a little bit more than a theory now. I mean, shoot, now there's scientific ideas and experiments coming out showing particles acting like it's, a hologram, like it's a consciousness-dependent hologram, so it's much more than a theory now. And it really was much more than a theory a long time ago. People just ignored it because, that kind of throws the whole show off if you realize we're in a projection system, and it's based upon these principles in our mind. And you related to the cube, and in a way the fractal projection, and mainly a fractal holographic disk, the way you can crack a holographic disk into a bunch of pieces and you'll get smaller images of the whole throughout them all. And so it's similar to duality or polarity, but it's not that yet. It's simply self-similarity. And so then maybe you can help me out with this one. What I came up with, but not obeying, but not acknowledging and corresponding with this law of correspondence. Well, the one thing is that the way you would go about that is by failing to correspond, or to realize there's correspondence, and to basically realize that what happens on one layer directly shines through, projects through to these other layers, and what we're experiencing on one layer is being projected, shine through from a higher or a deeper, or however you want to put it, another layer. And so what would you say the result of that is? I could say off the top of my head that is, if we're being in this kind of labyrinth, but it's a labyrinth if you don't obey the law. If you see it, it's perfection. Without obeying or acknowledging that, we become, in a way, we feel like we're lost. We basically, it's like we're blinded to only the layer that we're in, and it's the way of getting trapped. If we ignore the mentalism and ignore the correspondence, we can't see these other layers, and then we can't see that our mind is making the pathway one or the other, so a person will be kind of blinded or trapped within their situation. You can add to that if you have anything else to...
Failing to relate to correspondence and the corresponding factor that the mind has on all of this, we become so focused on our unit that we fail to recognize that within us is this whole other layer, this universe. If we don't understand what's going on with us and within us, how could we ever hope? How could we ever possibly dream of getting a grip on the things outside of us, the things that we touch and love, the external, So, yes, we can go about our lives doing just watching football and eating popcorn and beating our wives, but until we realize that all of that has its own relation to what's going on inside of us, like where we're coming from, and we will have no idea where the hell we're going. We'll just keep repeating the same pattern over and over and over and over. And like it is insanity. I know everybody's heard the, if you do the same thing over and over and expect a different result, then you are stuck in this insidious loop of misrepresenting correspondence. And if you don't change that primary function, if you refuse to see the pot of gold for what it is, you're stuck. And even if you change just slightly a little bit, if you just shine the light a little differently on this pot of gold and see it glisten in a way you haven't seen it glisten before, you're already halfway there. You just have to correspond your mind. I don't know. I want to make a sentence, just like a single sentence that encompasses every word of the principles, because it's there. It's those are like the singular proverbial words that can be explained through all of these metaphors and pretty things. But until we can simplify it for ourselves enough, until we break down this way too complex topic, we will never not find our way forward. So that's where I see that. If we ignore the correspondence, then we ignore the validity of our own experience.
Yeah, man, I was going to say something just like that, but I'm going to still go through it. But that last part you added, we ignore the validity of our own experience, because everything that I led up to is that we lose ourselves. But the way you said the next few sentences in one sentence through that, and a goal would be to say all the principles in one. That would be like all the vowels or the original sounds in one language, maybe one utterance. I don't know what would happen at that point. Maybe you would unlock a code or something in the universe.
The universe would just sneeze and everybody would go, what the hell?
What was that?
God.
So, but you explained it, and it clarified it. Not corresponding with self-similarity makes us lose that connection of self. And in that same way, we lose the connection to other selves around us, not seeing how we correspond to how we feel of people acting to us and how we act upon them. So we influence others, and then we wouldn't see how this universe corresponds to the higher universes or the lower. Or in other words, because I was saying higher and lower before, but it's really the universe within the immaterial world with the physical, the metaphysical with the physical external universe here. There wouldn't be that connection, and that connection is born through mind. So, and then you mentioned insanity, and that's when the insanity idea comes in, and since there's correspondence in that metaphysical plane, it's the future, past, and present as well. There's no longer correspondence between that. There you get to the repeating pattern, where we lose control of progression, and then you kind of wrapped up with the refuse to see the goal, which relates to the mentality before, and it's kind of like refusing to see the path. And so all these things, it's really a really powerful principle there. And of course, all of them line up together. But, at layer 2, if you ignore that, everything turns into a big jumbled mess. But then you see 7, 8 down the line, how much the universe could turn into this dream, a paradoxical paradise, dream. And so I think that was a good correspondence on that one.
You said it! Ah!
The law of vibration. And that one I liked a lot because it's like a trick. Nothing is truly at rest. When all things are examined closely, directly, it's revealed that there's motion and change at every layer everywhere. And from there, that there is no non-motion, there is no true stillness. The state of rest, or what we perceive as the end or death, is just a transfer to another layer that we're not actually looking at from the one that, we perceive the rest or the end. So there is no end, quote unquote, there is no zero, and there is no death. It is an illusion. And then you said how the person is just basically light condensed to a slower vibration. and yet it's all still in motion. It's basically fluid. Consciousness is like a gas or a fluid, and we are consciousness, and the world is made out of consciousness. And so then the loss of that principle is basically the belief in death, the belief that things are dead still. We're in a cold, dark, rocky universe where if we don't make it happen, plug in the diesel and start the truck up or whatever, nothing's going to work. It's not going to, you got to force it to do something for you. When in reality, if you sit back and fold your legs up into a lotus, everything still works. Everything still goes. It just happens. It just spins around you as it goes. We're in this kind of carousel. So that's that layer kind of wrapped up really quick. You can add to that if you want.
Just that, with, I'm just going to relate it because crystals are a very, very big deal right now. And that's coming to the forbearing of our consciousness, because that in and of itself is a lesson that we're going to have to adhere to, because that corresponds one and the same with us. If I could just move to a little bit of an Eastern mindset, you have this whole new understanding, but it's ancient, of like chakras and energy flow and stuff. But with like the duality, we have like the Western mentality or the Eastern mentality. There's very mystic, but this whole Western philosophy, our medicine is very A, B. One is very masculine, one is very feminine. So we, as like the East, is westernizing their mindset, and the West is slowly incorporating these teachings, slowly, but albeit progressing to meld together. So you have all of this new resurgence of the talk, like this talk here. The fact that we're having this conversation in and of itself is a miracle of circumstance and time. It's not chance. Like I said, chance is just a law that has not yet been defined. But vibration, we're starting to incorporate all these other teachings from the East, chakras and pressure points and all these things that bring us as a unit and makes us make sense internally. So understanding the internal mechanisms of how energy flows, when we come to that very, very solid understanding of how we work, we and go, oh damn, well that makes sense, or oh, I get the same feeling that you're getting about this thing. There has to be some sort of relation there. I have these here. They're the I don't know. I don't feel like scooting too far forward. They're the platonic solids, but they're done in the colors of the electromagnetic color spectrum, and it's merging two hemispheres of thought. Everybody asks me always, are those chakras? And I say, well, kind of, more or less. You have the natural shape of atomic structures and electrical energies in and around the fabric of existence that holds and structures all things, but at the same time, it's all energy as well. So you have the perfect melding of energy and physicality in the same situation. So everything has its proper wavelength, and in that wavelength there's a certain vibration. So all of these seem like on the surface, on paper, very separate things, but ultimately it's just one very broad concept that self-relates to itself and exists for the other thing to make sense. They just feed each other. So just, I guess, to be crude, if you get a certain vibe, bro, follow that. Take into consideration that what you're experiencing is a valid thing. To do anything less would be a besmirching of your own experience. So, yeah, pick up some hematite, or put a crystal in your window. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what anybody says. It matters what you feel and what you think about that thing and how you act on that thing. So that's kind of vibration for me, is that everything is impossibly valid at the same time. So word.
In word, a vibration, sonic.
Yes, spelling, for God's sakes.
I feel like you're beyond yourself here, because you drove me deeper to the degree where It's not just the belief in death that creates the stillness. It's the belief, it's the loss of the vision of the motion of all things and the capability to interact, and it's like a death while you're alive. And you don't have to go and die physically, it's that you're dead while you're alive. It's like the crystal. The crystal holds an energy vibration that when it's charged, they're piezoelectric, when there's pressure, they emit a charge or a frequency. That is basically a combination of the shape, the physical aspect, and the energy, the vibration aspect. They become one, just like the body, just like a light bulb, just like anything. The sun, a flower. Life is the combination of the solid and the energetic, or the vibration and the perception of the slower, what we think is still, which is actually just a slower vibration. And so within that we have harmony from the vibration and unification of the two. And then so basically, we lose that continuity when we don't respect the vibration, when we don't acknowledge it and see that it's all vibration. It's not just that we believe that it ends or something like that, it's that it ends as soon as we stop noticing it. And then you brought up the shapes, the solids. That drives even harder how it's the mixture of matter and energy vibration that generates life in the universe, generates change, generates time, correspondence, mentality, all those things. And basically the geometry, we've mentioned this before, the geometry equals frequency, the frequency equals vibration. When they're put together, you create the world and the way things are experienced and they're interacting. That only works through that harmonized unification of the various levels. And so then to ignore that is not only to ignore the vibration and overall there is death, is to ignore feeling like we are the crystal and the frequency is emotion and mind and consciousness, is to die consciously, is to basically to ignore feeling, to experience death in the moment, and which is because this vibration relates to the harmony of the mind, because that's not a solid thing. The brain is solid. The mind, consciousness, is vibration. It's waving through the air. It's emitted. So it's the death of the mind in the way. And it's literally living while dead and dying while alive. And so you keep flipping it and pushing it further, and it's like, I don't know, I feel like I'm high off the conversation, which is how it's supposed to work. And that's good.
Man,
have some of my brain vibrations. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. You could charge up a crystal, but my roommate's a little loud. If you can hear him, excuse me.
Yeah, I keep expecting somebody to walk through my door anyway, so whatever, man.
Moving right along, vibrating right along here. Just everything's in motion. And you could even say, we're not moving, it's moving through us. The vibration isn't even one way or the other, it's all. It's from all angles. And that way time is from all angles. Because that ties into correspondence before as well. It's not just linear in one way. It's a non-polarized, unipolar, spherical, like a toroidal expansion outward in all directions.
On that note, I was at a, I don't know, I want to tell a bit of a story and relate it to what's going on right now. I was at a camp out, as it were. There was music and fire and lights and stuff, and it was basically like a music festival, but it was night, and we were gonna stay on this old Indian reservation, and I had a lot of people offer me all kinds of illicit substances. However, that was the first night I ever took DMT in my life, and there was this absolute objectivity, yet this utter sense of belonging to all things. So I have this beautiful trip through eternity several times over in a span of a couple of minutes, and notice that, all things are the way they're supposed to be. Every choice you make is valid to shaping your experience, and all experience is valid to shaping your choices. So it's like it was this self-fulfilling, coming to coming to understand a lot of broad things in a single moment. And I'm not trying to dwell on that, but that was a very valid part of the night. However, what came later was something that gave me a different kind of perspective, and it's one of the things that helped me solidify all of this. After running around in the woods barefoot for God knows how long, I went to the main bonfire, and there was this young man who had pupils the size of dinner plates and didn't speak to anybody for hours and hours and hours. It appeared that he hadn't been there with anybody. If there was somebody there, they had clearly went and, screwed off or done something else and left him to sit there. Every time I kept coming back around to this fire, he was still sitting there, just so entranced, so giving to this fire. And I could tell he was on something to where he was out of his body or just hyper observant of the situation. And there were so many people like sneering and laughing at this child of the universe who was losing his mind looking into the fire. And I was the only person that had any sort of gumption to go and observe with him. And so I sat right next to this dude. I looked at the fire for a while, and I just, I saw all of the alchemical process happening, and whatever, it's beautiful. I'm living this very beautiful experience. And so I just turned to him, and I say, so, what have you learned from the fire? And he said that life is in a constant state of giving, that it is only going, not coming. You put fuel on the fire, and it only consumes and gives. It doesn't go back in. The cigarette only burns. The cigarette smoke does not go back in. It just expands, never asking anything else. Like a tree does not think, oh, I must grow that I may be a home to others. I must grow and spread my seed so that life can thrive. Or I must process all of these elements to give off oxygen that others may live. It doesn't ask anything. It just is. It just expands. It just grows. And that night, he said a bunch of other stuff too that was very validating to what he was saying, but when I watched the fire, I sat with him for probably about an hour, and they were constantly throwing wood onto this huge flame, and the passage of time was completely distorted at that point, and I saw it at a different frame rate almost, where it was just this exhale, just consuming and only giving. So it goes with what you were saying. It's just in this constant state of motion, this giving, this unspoken knowing of what it is you're supposed to do. And at that point in my life, I wasn't very happy with where I was. I was learning all of these things and starting to apply them. But when I really stepped back and had conversations with things that I didn't know I could converse with, I realized that all of the choices I've made thus far, every choice that humanity has made, for better or for worse, led us to this moment, led us to this conversation, and anything else that derives as a result of this unspoken giving, this exchange of energies. Yeah, I thought maybe that related a little bit.
Yeah. That vibrations don't go backwards. They might go both ways in time, but they're still going out. It's just from another perspective. And when we talked about that a long time ago, and I was like, what maybe for the wood, it's like going backwards, it's taking from that, but it's really unraveling the energy that's in that. It's not, nothing's going in reverse. It's just a continuous, and then the real, idea is that it's a continuous exhale. Life is growth. There's no such thing as life being the opposite of growth. There's no aspect of that in existence, but you see how weird we can get, where we're like little g gods, because we can ignore the principles, and then we get an inverted perception of what life should be, which doesn't actually make sense, but if we want to experience it that way, we can get that obscured perception. Honestly, it's really weird when people do that, because we don't know where we are. We don't know where we fit into that, because then it's like, well, what are we then? What are we? Just the unraveling? But it's not. It's a continual expansion on all levels. And we're life. We're alive. Then we're expanding. We are a self. We become something different. We always were what we are, or what we were. We always are what we were, but we're not the same from what we become. So we're always becoming something new, but we've always been ourselves. So it's this continual process of changing, a paradoxical changing of what already is and what has been. And it's really paradoxical and weird, but that's where maybe the care comes in. We skip ahead. We just kind of you kind of got to go with it. Refusing to being like, I don't care about that. I'd rather negate that because I see it everywhere, but it doesn't make sense to me. The effect of that is losing the wonder of life, of everything that it is. So yeah, polarity is the next one.
Yes, it is.
That's the dual nature. As we breathe right along or something, I don't know. Unravel our minds. Polarity. That is the one that relates to duality, dual nature, which is. Again, it's almost like it cycles back to the complexity behind correspondence now, where it's more refined. And this is the trick that happens in society. Polarize to this side, polarize to the other side, don't care about what's in the middle, remove that care, and then they'll flip-flop because you need that other side eventually, but you'll become it instead of integrating it, and you won't have any control over that. And that's where all that also ties into the gender, which is, again, one or two down, and so where it's really weird what people are doing in the world. As well, the people that are kind of manipulating things, we can also say that they're trying to teach people by manipulating so many things, because they're pushing gender or polarity one way or the other. Well, it's to show people that we've kind of been out of polarity, we've been gender biased so much. It's an overly masculine society and a truly feminine world, so they're like, they're plucking the strings to try and get us to realize what's going on and snap back. And as well, some are probably being generally mischievous. But that's their own mistake, because that will serve us more than it serves them in the end. Unless they give everything they own, everything they have, everything they gained to the people, saying, well, this is why I was really doing it. Because if they don't, then that's not why they're really doing it. And it's going to bite them in the end. That's the whole cause and effect and every other correspondence and level and layer that applies to that. Their breath will become very shortened and shallow. Because that, if it's for learning, if it's for growth, then it has to be allowed. When it's right, when it's time, which is, we're nearing that time. So, and it's not because the masses are doing it, no. It's just because there's just enough that get it, that finally get it, that are awake and aware.
It's the one person in an audience that it draws the attention just enough to take you away from what it is you're perceiving. And that's a really odd metaphor, but I mean, if you have a pool, a wonderful pool, you can see straight through the bottom, and you maintain this pool, and you're gonna have a killer barbecue, man. And when you get there, you've taken care of the pool so much so that everybody gets there, and a leaf falls into the pool, and you can have this like very, very broad and clear thing, but what you're drawn to is the one discrepancy, the one thing that stands out. And you don't just go, oh, it's a pool. You go, oh, there's a leaf in the pool. and it's like that one person in the audience that coughs or claps a little too long. The differential in which we base our experience off of. We are truly multi-dimensional beings. We're only beginning to explore these extra dimensions outside and within us, but ultimately we're like fourth dimensional creatures pushing for like this fifth dimension that is contained in a three-dimensional hologram reality based on the perception of duality. But at the end of the day, we're all just one organism, constantly progressing. So it all corresponds.
And so within that duality, we wouldn't have the experience of difference. We would just literally be like one interconnected bubble of ideas, and that wouldn't be as unifying when we come back to that, if we couldn't break away from that. And a good metaphor as well, with the one you said, is if it's a horror movie, and you got the one guy that's just like, oh yeah, that's great, like, woo! And everybody's like horrified, and they kind of snap out of it, and like, what is really going on here? And everything clarifies. And then the duality one is it can go on forever. It's really, even the experience of duality can go on forever, but explaining it can go on. It can go on and on. But basically, the idea is that, and I was really surprised when you said it, because there is no such thing as the absence of light. There is no such thing as stop or end. There is only the absence of what was. There's no such thing, right? There's no such thing as the absence of light. Well, technically, I meant to say darkness, but in the same sense, there is no such thing as the absence of light, which is darkness, what we call it. There's only the absence of light, and I kind of messed it up. But there's only light. That's all there is. And that kind of works into this holographic projection theory, which takes a while to explain, so I'm not going to go into it this show. But the idea between the polarity, the duality, is to, well, what I like that you said is that the easiest way to explain it is, what is 50%, say you have and when you do it mathematically, that's where the weird stuff with programming and symbolism and code and geometry and frequency all begins to play out. Say you labeled 100% of a certain amount of temperature in a certain area as 100% hot, and you label a certain area, not like 212 degrees below what is it called? That's absolute zero, or not one is that absolute? I think that is, because there's really no zero for temperature, except theoretically, absolute zero is the zero. We can't perceive that because it would like instantly turn us to glass. You know what I'm saying? We wouldn't correspond into that layer. We would fractalize and instantly break off into our individual cellular components. So we can't interact in that layer. We can't perceive it. Say you have a 0.100 degrees or 100% heat. What would 50% hot and 50% cold be if you were literally 50% in the middle? Would that be hot or would that be cold? Technically, it would be neither. It would be both and it would be neither. So with that idea, you get that reconciliation that you mentioned, where within what we think is the most hot is hot, cold is cold, it must be that. Somewhere within that, you get nothing, where it's both. And because it's both, it's neither, or it's simultaneously. It's technically not neither, because that doesn't exist. It's simply the duality collapses and it transcends. And the poles reconcile, and you see that there is one thing, and you see that there's this transcendent fluid substance that is actually explaining everything, and it's the absence of that which we call another substance. And seeing that as an actual other substance, like coldness or darkness or lack of whatever, is the mistake of polarity, of remaining polarized and not achieving that transcendent understanding of all things. Because within that, everything is a handshake. Everything is friends. Without that, they're constantly battling. It's a continuous battle between the elements, between the ideas, the concepts, the races, cultures, creeds. Everything is a battle. So that even goes into, I'm going to go right, you can add to that, but it goes into right along with the rhythm, because as I kind of glanced up, I saw working, we know from what you said, the rhythm is keeping that inward-outward motion. It's almost as if the polarity becomes rhythmic with what there is to be, and within that change, which has to become rhythmic, when we know it's rhythmic, we understand that, we acknowledge that, and we can synergize with the highs and lows. And when we're working, the failure to acknowledge that is working out of rhythm, which wastes energy. So being polarized in a way is truly wasting the energy that we think we're attaching to the substance of what is, and applying our energy towards that is actually, in a way, losing that congruence. You can add to the polarity before we move on.
For the record, Aug and I have talked about a lot of things. And one thing him and I have talked about in some pretty swell detail is like numbers and like human interaction and how that goes into play. So you've got the idea of polarity. You have a one thing that seems a little bit different than the other thing, and you say, oh, there's a discrepancy somewhere in there, and it's like asking somebody, okay, here's black, here's white, find me gray. Find me a gray that everybody can agree on, and everybody will say, no, well, it's a little lighter, a little darker than this. There is no one gray. It's just endless points of perspective on an endless spectrum of perspective. But there's a lot to be gained with polarity in the sense that while helping us break down these complex motifs that pervade our life, for this example, I want to talk about exactly what it is that we are a part of. There is you, Aug, there is me, Spencer, and somewhere, somehow, outside of this box, there's another observer. You, the observer, the third person in this equation. Now, when bouncing back these ideas between two people, we're just kind of echolocating vibration and understanding. So him and I are expanding on what it is that we already have somewhat defined for ourselves and solidifying that. Now, that's the power of polarity, the two things, finding that gray area of where you can relate. However, when you introduce a third person, the observer in this, the third person, there's something about the number 3 outside of polarity, the person observing these two differentials, that they gain something aside from the bouncing back of waves and understandings between two people. So when you have two people in a conversation, you're basically just solidifying what it is you already know. But when a third person joins the conversation, or there's another factor to that equation, there's something new. There's something fresh. And that's why polarity just happens to exist in all things. We have to be able to look at two things to receive something resembling a gray, our idea of gray, or lukewarm. So hopefully whoever is watching this, whoever has the patience and stomach to sit through this, hopefully they'll find their happy little, their gray. And that's the last thing I wanted to say on polarity, is that that conversation we've rehashed over and over and over, is that there's a third person to this equation, and hopefully they're learning something they didn't know before, based on two people solidifying their ends of the spectrum.
And we did repeat, I think, the polarity again to rehash it, and then we did. I know you're talking about the other conversation we had with the numbers, which about how we would talk about this and how you would talk about it from the last time we talked about it. There's like such an expansion here, such a breath here, breathing. I want to bring up a video, Into the Deep on YouTube, made, which is the 9 Veils Introduction and Discussion. He talks about that, how you have a line and a point, and until you connect them, you don't have a real way of relating. But as soon as you do, you ultimately get a triangle, and the triangle is the symbol of multiplicity. That as soon as you reach that, it's the smallest amount that you get. You have to, oh shit, what are we doing here? As soon as you reach that, you access another plane of multiplicity, which expands far beyond the sphere or the plane or wherever we're looking at, the cube. It expands in a way that can hit angles that you cannot get with those other shapes, at least not in the same way. And so the way it breaks down is duality. I'm just going to rehash it real quick. When you have a conversation on the phone, two people, whatever, there's one person, and this is psychology and communication. They talk about this a little bit. Because there's nonverbal communication, there's like cross communication, there's I can't remember the words exactly. There's continuous communication, and then there's like one-on-one communication, where it's only when you're like completely silent basically each time, but it's always usually a continuous form of communication, a simultaneous communicating on multiple levels, and it's literally like a symphony of like and eye contact and motions, and because you can tell when a person's interested or not, and we're literally making these, or at least our brains and our spirits are making these decisions, and it's not hidden to that on that level, because a lot of people don't know how they're doing these things, but an agent trained to interrogate people, he'll be watching everything. His brain is on to see that level. That the person doesn't even know they're speaking. They're speaking a symphony, and he's reading their minds. And that's without advanced technology. But one-on-one, you can only max have that person talking, and there's one communication to him, and then the other person talking, or her. And then, so you basically have not times two, but basically happening simultaneously. As soon as you add a third, you have the two going, and each one, there's basically a connection there, and a connection there. So you have three conversations. It goes from one that happens twice, deuce, to three that happens thrice. And it's almost like, literally, would it be, did we decide that it was 9, I think, conversations? It was something like that. It was like 6 or 9 at once. And so the level jumps from duality into multiplicity starting at 3. That's the gateway into everything. And it's the same with the mind, heart, and gut. Those are the 3 minds of the person. When those are connected, there's that vibrational harmonization, that unity. Correspondence above, below, in and out, all these levels. So that's the being. The gut, the mind, or the heart, that's just an organ. That's all it is. When they're combined, you get a souled human being that's essentially literally an immortal essence coming from the immaterial plane, resonating here, communicating ideas, things. When you feel from your heart, your intuition, your gut, and you think from your mind, you're getting cosmic information that's always been here. It's eternal. It can't die. It can't go anywhere else. It's been here. So that's beyond time, beyond space. It's a paradox, but it's also a transcendence. So we don't spend too much time doing this.
It's just gone on too long.
The principle of cause and effect. And that's the basic idea behind karma. Rowing out waste energy when you're going against the tide, going with it, it synergizes and you get more energy than one or the other alone. It's basically the going with the rhythm, or not the rhythm, well, technically that's what it is, because one describes the other in the effort of which way it's going to go. I think I skipped the rhythm. No, we were on rhythm, yeah. Going with it, excuse me. Because the waves going in and out is kind of like polarity. So when that's used in balance, going with it, it's as if there's just motion, like, a bobber or a thing on, thing, I don't want to say a dead body, but like something just floating on the beach. It just goes. It has no control. When the mind is integrated with that rhythm, you can surf. You can do all this stuff that people love to do, or sail out past a certain level. And even with the rhythm of the winds, you sail a boat and things like that. You can do things that it's like the one-on-one, 2, 3, and then the multiplicity of every possibility that we couldn't gain without that. We couldn't gain without the rhythm. It would all fight itself. And so the lack of using that, and to restate, the lack of being of acknowledging polarity is not transcending beyond the poles, but as well, it's not seeing that the polarity is just a self-reference of one and the other, and that's our uniqueness, that's our character, because that's what you kind of bring up. That's not just all about crushing polarities, the fact that there's beauty in that, you know. And so with the rhythm, the beauty in the rhythm is you can do stuff that you couldn't do before because it's already doing it. You just kind of got to jump in line with the universe and allow it to push you along. And ignoring the effects, misaligning with the improper cause for a desire, which is the more and more extended ways that then you're free to break the law, but you can't ignore the consequences, and we get the karma. That you'll lead yourself down a path that you really didn't want to because you weren't following the rhythms of the beat, walking down the street. All right. So gender. We're wrapping it up here. And this is obviously, how do you get gender from shapes and sounds and vibration and rhythm? This is the one where it becomes a person. It becomes a living essence. It becomes a person, an identity, a character. And at every level there is gender. When we leave here, there will be gender. Whatever we were doing before when we came here, there was gender. This level, it's feminine. Technically, the earth is feminine. And that goes in a bunch of ways where the masculinity of energy, consciousness, the atomic energy corresponds into matter, the mother earth energy, or form, and it motivates it into basically impregnating it into becoming what we call life, a seed growing, the sun, all that stuff. So you kind of get that breakdown in the universe, basics of energy and matter. But So because we're on a physical plane where all these things are kind of put together from a foundation to foundation until you get an eye on top, kind of like the pyramid, and it's an identity, they're described physically, meaning there's genitalia and stuff like that, and masculine features and character to go along with that, such as strength and then creativity. The idea is that is just the surface level. You know, sexual organs being the difference between gender is the surface level. You twist the jewel, you look through it, you see its way of mind. Masculine, we all know this if you've been paying attention, is straight to the point, the shortest way between A and B. It's how to get it done, how to use an instruction manual of your mind and make it happen. Feminine is to find the most beautiful way, the most invigorating way, the most emotionally rewarding way, and what you get out of the journey rather than the results. That's why the universe at large is one big feminine experience. Whereas in the end, it's perfect. It's perfectly one, perfectly the other. It's neither all technology or all spirit and organic. It's the journey as well as the experience, because it's going to lead up to something.
I like to use this because it's like a really good conversation piece. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of lessons to learn from this. The cube, the first, that is masculinity, like in its utmost form, and so you pass on through all these different things until you get to the feminine, which is the sphere. So again, it is just like it's this spectrum, and it doesn't end there. That's just what we perceive. You know, find me a more perfect shape than a sphere. We can't, because that's where we're at right now.
You can only go off a dimension where it's a toroid, but that's just the same thing in another perspective.
Sorry. But I mean, you've got the mentalities, the genitalia, but you also have these other, on physical levels, manifestations of gender. The very hard lines as opposed to very soft. In reference to, like, some people know, like the flower of life. You take spheres, circles, over and over and over and over again, you get this beautiful pattern. But when you connect the dots, you have all these like straight lines. They are in of themselves respectively powerful. They are one and the same, but they are two sides to the equation. And together, it is some kind of crazy stuff, truly. But not without being able to be fathomed. So, just inherently the gender of geometry is an important lesson as well, and that's why I got all of this. I have a dragonfly, which to me shows that there's this creature that's supposedly been around for like something like 300 million years, and it's changed in size and shape and stuff, but it's always stayed fundamentally itself. It's seen climate change over and over, and it's seen all of these different things yet remaining the same. So even though it has changed and adapted, it's still the same thing. Like, for God's sakes, the other end of that is an alligator, but I really didn't want an alligator on me, so I got a dragonfly. And that's the state of perseverance, knowing that anything is get-throughable. If a fucking dragonfly can do it, then why can't I? So there's the perseverance to get through life, and then the platonic solids and the electromagnetic color spectrum, which shows me on some level life is fundamentally perfect, and it doesn't matter how you want to slice the cake or shape the fucking pie. It's perfect. It's all geometry, and in any point in time where I don't think that there's some sort of structure to all of the pain, all of the loss, all of the joy, all the gain, all the progress, I'm forced to look down as I'm writing or thinking or crying something, and I look and go, damn it, this is fundamentally what it is supposed to be. Perfect.
It's perfectly imperfect.
Yes.
Because you have and then that geometry, how the geometry is the angles, is the frequencies of vibration. You have the hard angles and straight lines to the soft, the sphere, masculine to feminine, and so you have everything in between. It's literally all the other levels of correspondence, polarity, mentality, mentalism, self-reflection, self-similarity. They're all there on your arm. In that's like it's not only the rainbow, the electromagnetic of light. It's of everything that can be theorized, that can be idealized and seen, is covered by those shapes. And I never thought of that before. I thought about thinking about it, but I never got it that way, probably because we didn't go through the list like that. And then the same way is the flower of life pattern, when it's complete, that is the way to get to have feminine beginnings and to end up with masculine lines, meaning the male comes from the female, not the other way around, which is it's taught backwards. It's taught as a masculine male god, when it might be more of the opposite, that it starts with the feminine essence, with the feminine void, if you will. And then ignoring the gender is kind of like results in failing to respect and feel that perfection in the difference between selves, between halves. Like we're, the other half of the gender. And then one, as a result, might impose their gender on another and, be masculine to the feminine essence, mean to a female. Any idea you can work that out in life, or too hard on your body, whatever that is. You disconnect from nature, always around computers and electrical stuff and just squared lines and messes your head up, stuff like that. Or you try to impose another gender on your own, and you try to be a gender you're not, and you accept it as something else. And then we come to the last one, the last principle, which is care, which is kind of wrapped up by mind, heart, and gut. That when all these are applied, and we do it with care, ultimately, I kind of feel like that's what they meant when you become a god, little g. Like, you literally can see everything from all angles. It's as if, well, let me say this. Like, I don't have time to explain. I think both of us don't have time, but we can continue talking. But the hidden mind of God is everywhere, but it is in no one place in particular. This hidden mind is that sacred geometry that can be, and the principles that can be used to explain why everything is what it is, and what it means in essence to everything else in the universe. When you can form a language, an equation, a geometry, or a drawing or whatever, and pass that on through objective communication to another person, you've made the hidden language, the hidden mind, the secret, visible and known. And you, in that way, can recreate that, and you become the creator. So that's how I'm going to wrap up my whole thing behind that. And then, the care, you have the motive, the intention, the production of action. Without that care, everything, the whole 9 yards, it goes to nothing. It's the dead body floating in the water. And so you can add what you will and wrap that up.
Is that a log? Log? Is that a corpse? I don't know.
It's a guy that didn't have care.
It's a dude who didn't care. He didn't learn how to swim.
Yeah,
he was looking for something deeper, like the man who swims out to the ocean with the tide.
Exactly, the ocean of his mind. And he drowned in the unconscious, you see.
That works.
Waters are always unconscious. Always represent the mystery, the hidden realm.
Yeah.
At least in my mind. I always think of that now.
This has been fruitful.
Oh yeah. So, alright people, I'll keep the call going. I'm gonna end the recording. I hope everybody enjoyed that. I'm gonna go through and line up times for all these explanations. I know I kinda drew it on and along at the end there. Maybe somebody will find benefit in that. If we pay attention to these things, all these charades, all this confusion, and then all the beautiful mystery between self and other self and what is going on becomes revealed. It becomes unveiled. It becomes visible. The hidden becomes visible. So take a look, have a gander, allow yourself to dream a bit and open up that feeling. Listen to your heart, your mind, and your gut. Connect them into one congruent pattern that is neither a perfect sphere or a perfect cube. It is some combination of spiraling, cube, spherical, toroidal, structures. Basically, it's all things in existence, which we create an energetic structure by being here present in this realm, which is the gift of God, basically. The gift of life. Do you have anything else you want to say before I close the recording?
Just to reiterate, always go with your instincts. If you come across something and you're just like, I've got a bad feeling about this, have that bad feeling. Feel it, know it, and act on it. Feel enough to know enough to do enough.
That sounds good. All right, thank you. And
thank you.
Say your name that you want to be out there.
Oh, my name is Spencer Eskridge, like an Eskimo ridge, like Eskridge. I have a YouTube channel, but it's not where I want it to be. But we're working on it.
Well, it's a breathing and unraveling, so we'll get there. Everyone will. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again.